From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is the original podcast about consumption, and we are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network. You can find all the other shows and our show at yourunpodcast.com. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. I don't know about you, Sean, but I just finished a big meal of dog food and chocolate milk. I'm ready to talk about some fucking shit. How are you doing?
I'm 2 knuckles deep and ready to tussle.
What have you been up to this week? It's only been a couple days since we last chatted, but what have you watched? I'm hoping you watched one thing that I just finished.
Nothing. The only thing that I watched since the last time we recorded is we had family movie night at the house. We watched, my wife has been on this, I don't know, she's been gotten it into her head that we need to watch The Marvels.
That's a show, right?
No, the movie, the one that just came out last year with Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and the other lady. They haven't seen any of the other ones. I don't know if they give her her superhero name.
I really hope that's her superhero, because I would
the other lady
be in.
Look out, it's the other lady.
Yeah, it'd be a great line of dialogue. It sells itself. Anyway.
They haven't seen any of the other ones. I mean, we've seen a couple of the Spider-Man movies. I think we've seen all the Spider-Man ones, the Tom Holland Spider-Man ones. We started a couple of years ago trying to watch all the Marvel movies, but I really feel like Marvel and Disney are shooting themselves in the foot, continuing to do this serial thing where you have to be in the universe, you have to watch all the movies, you have to watch all the shows, all the series.
I gave up on it.
Yeah, I haven't watched anything since WandaVision on that whole front.
The last thing I watched was Loki, the first season.
Okay.
And I was trying to keep up on the whole, everything's all connected bullshit, but when they finished that first season, spoilers for whoever hasn't seen it yet, and they basically just ended that season with, we're going to fuck over the timeline, and the, 100 hours that you just spent catching up to that means nothing now. The timeline's just something else, and it just kind of pissed me off.
Yeah.
I was trying to
it turns you off.
Well, I was trying to separate myself from it after the Avengers one. I kind of thought at the time, this is kind of cool that they have this big of a idea to try to tie together. And yeah, now I'm just I don't have time for all this horse shit.
Well, then I think of somebody like my wife who wants to, for some reason, like I said, just has this idea in her head that she has to watch this movie. She's been talking about watching it for weeks. And we decided to kind of get together on our family movie night and watch it. And the whole time they're pausing it and asking me questions about it. And I'm, like I said, I've seen most of them up until, I think I kind of fell off. WandaVision's the last thing I watched the whole series of, but pretty much after Endgame, I was kind of done with it. And they're asking me, who's this?
WandaVision came out around the same time as Loki, didn't it? Wasn't that the first run of TV shows?
Yeah, I think it was just after. Yeah, it was after. I think Loki was the first. I don't know. But we're around the same.
We're not that far apart as far as when we gave up.
Yeah. And she, they're just asking me questions. I can only answer so many things. I haven't seen all of it either. And I did see Black Widow. I forgot about that. Saw that in the theater for whatever reason.
Forgot that existed.
Yeah. So did I. But yeah, so that's really all I watched. I did, right before I came down here, I was watching this. I was saying to myself, I've got to watch something to talk about. And I turned on Amazon Prime. They have a documentary called Wasted Talent, and it's about the actor Lilo Brancato, who was in A Bronx Tale. He was it was his first thing. He was an unknown actor. He wasn't even an actor. He got picked out at a beach. And they're like, you should come try out for this role. You look like Robert De Niro. You should do it. And how he basically started in Hollywood and then he got involved in drugs, and he was involved in an incident where a New York City policeman was killed, and they were trying to stick him with the rap. And it was kind of he didn't really have anything to do with it. It was a first time director who was a former police officer who was a bodyguard to the stars. And the concept felt like it was in the right place. It just was very amateur, some of the angles that they used. I'm not generally, just to kind of put this out there, I will link everything in the show notes of the stuff that we talk about. And there's links to Amazon Prime. They're affiliate links. If you want to help out the podcast, you can click them. If you click them, and we get a cent for every $1 zillion that you spend. And I usually link all these. I'm not going to link this one because it's just not, it was 44, it was an hour. It was an hour long. It's just not worth an hour to sit and watch. It's kind of a bunch of people saying the same thing. He deserves a second chance. He doesn't deserve a second chance. He deserves, just back and forth. It was not even, I've spent way too much time talking about it. It's not even worth that much air.
Does that mean you haven't watched this week's WWE biography?
No, I was going to watch that with my wife because she's been into watching the biographies with me, and I'm like, I'll hold off. It's Scott Hall. I really wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
But it just didn't have enough time to watch it today. And like I said last episode, Dark Side of the Ring at the time of recording just started. And I think the new episode on that one comes out tomorrow. So I'll have a little bit more for Wrestler Corner next week.
Should I save Mr. Ramon for next week then? And we can just kind of hit it all at once?
Mr. Ramon. Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Yeah, anything else you want to tap on them before I ramble off some stuff?
No, I've been playing Helldivers 2. That's pretty much what's been occupying besides editing podcasts and not watching TV.
The hell is Helldiver 2?
Helldivers 2 is a game that's a third-person shooter where it's kind of like Starship Troopers. Like, it's pretty much follows a lot of Starship Troopers. There's one set of enemies are these bugs, giant bugs. The other side are these automatons that look like Terminators, essentially. And your goal is to spread democracy. So it's this really like authoritarian government but they're all about democracy and freedom and shit. And the characters will scream these like little quips about freedom and liberty and stuff. It's tongue in cheek. It wears its heart on its sleeve very much. And you can call down these like airstrikes and stuff. It's a fun game. It came out a couple weeks ago. It had some server problems for a while, but I've been playing it since it came out. And that's pretty much what I've been doing. It's on PS5 and PC.
I have neither of those.
You have PC?
No, I don't. I have a Mac. I don't have a PC.
Well, we'll scratch that. We'll cut that out.
I guess I could put it on my work computer. I'm sure they'd be thrilled about that.
Probably wouldn't
run splendidly. Well, I spent part of my day yesterday when I saw Bill Burr down in Detroit. I thought that was pretty great. So this is the first time I've seen him as his stand-up act since having kids. And not all cut up for Netflix or whatever. Still has it. Still just as good as ever. He's a different kind of angry now, if this makes any sense at all. He's like a pissed off responsible parent, but he's really good at it. So he still does a lot of jokes that kind of push the limit. I think my favorite thing he said the whole night is he was going on about how he thinks women in general need to take like self-defense classes like Taekwondo and shit like that. And he goes, instead, you're sitting here in a spin class riding a bike that doesn't go anywhere, just like your fucking stories. I thought that was a pretty good joke that landed really well. Wife even laughed at it, so I can't get in too much trouble. I'm not the one who said it. I just repeated it. But I'm not Bill Burr. I don't have that kind of delivery. Then
I was laughing on the inside.
Doesn't count. I did watch a documentary called Roadie, the documentary. It's good to know that it's documentary when they put it right in the title like that. But
yeah, it's a good indication that it should be a documentary, maybe.
I found it on Amazon, but it's basically about this dude who was a roadie for bands like some band that I've never heard of. I'm assuming they never really got that big, but then he roadied with Agnostic Front and Ignite. And it's funny because like the documentary is very much so supposed to be framed as like, it depends on what point of the movie you tune in. Like at the beginning is like, this is the movie that is going to document what roadies are and what roadies do as a profession, more or less. But it goes in like rabbit holes where it's like this one guy who happens to be shooting the documentary. It's really just him it's more of a biography than a documentary in a lot of points.
Tries to position it as a documentary, but just a way for him to tell his stories, basically.
Right, with the occasional guy that like also looks like more of the stereotypical roadie that's like, yeah, well, I did all these drugs with Motley Crue and then we hooked up with these chicks and that's what roadies do. I'm like, kinda. It's okay. It wasn't very long. I think that's why I hit play on it. It was only like an hour and 15 minutes long or something like that. I think if it went much longer, I would have been like, this is rapidly becoming less and less interesting than what it is.
That's exactly the reason that I watched that one that I watched today. Because it was 40, well, like I said, an hour or whatever. And I was just like, okay, this is something quick I can watch.
Yeah. Well, that can be appealing. But sometimes you also realize like something is short because there's just not that much fucking there to begin with.
Exactly. It's not all that interesting, maybe.
Yeah. Interesting depending on who's interested, I guess. I don't know. It's like documentary for 3 or something. Then I did go on a little bit of a 1980s like skater punk movie side quest, which you had mentioned this. So you said you were pissed off about or had a gripe with one of these movies, which was the film Gleaming the Cube.
What is it called?
Which is Gleaming the Cube. Did I say it wrong?
No, just the first time it sounded weird when you said it. You said it right.
Did it? I don't know what it's. So Gleaming the Cube is basically this weird kind of shitty murder mystery with Christian Slater being like, he's not even really a skater kid in the sense you would expect for this kind of movie. Like skateboarding in this is more of like these kids' means of travel around town.
Yeah, it's just a plot device.
Yeah, with the occasional ramp that breaks out. It's got Tony Hawk in it at age probably 15 or something like that, who clearly body doubles for Christian Slater occasionally, which is, I mean, I'm not trying to say that like, the fuck, man, you're an actor, but you didn't actually learn how to skate. Like, I don't think skateboarding is as easily as just saying like, well, I'm an actor, now I'm also a skater. Like, it takes a little bit more than that.
Rodney Mullen also body doubled for Christian Slater.
Yeah, there's a couple. It was the whole Bones Brigade, wasn't it? Because I don't remember seeing Calabrero in there, but there's 4 of them, I think, that were early Bones Brigade kids.
I'm not sure, but I know all the land stuff where all the board tricks and stuff is Rodney Mullen.
Well, it looks yeah.
That's like the extended scene where he's doing where they just show Christian Slater's head like rocking back and forth. Yeah, and it's actually Rodney Mullen doing all the actual tricks. Which that guy's a otherworldly talent on a skateboard. So it's hard to mistake.
He's a whole different. It's funny because you never like in all the pro skaters that you hear about Tony Hawk and you hear about Bam Margera and you hear about these guys that are, you know, have shoe deals like Paul Rodriguez or fucking Eric Costa or something. I don't ever hear about Rodney Mullen anymore. It's like he just has disappeared and whatnot. This is the first time I remember seeing him in years. But you're right, he definitely is, I guess, as far as the sport is concerned, one of those guys that you should at least be aware of.
He did a TED Talk. Rodney Mullen had a whole TED Talk. It's all on YouTube. Yeah, I watched that, and I've watched a few interviews with him. This was a couple years ago that I watched it, so I think the TED Talk's from like 2018 or 2016.
What's the TED Talk? What's he?
I want to say it's something about like metaphysics and skateboarding or something, some crazy off the wall. I mean, it's interesting because it's him, and he's such an interesting person, like the way that he talks, his gestures, his mannerisms. He's just a really interesting guy, and he can make any topic kind of interesting, but you have to be aware of his cadence and the way that he talks and kind of like his inflections that he uses. So it's interesting. I'll link it. Hey, that's one thing I can link in the show notes. That's actually interesting that I've seen before.
There you go. Our first TED Talk being linked on the show.
Woohoo.
New stuff every day. So anyway, Gleaming the Cube is kind of not that great a movie, in my opinion.
Oh my God.
It's highlighted with a really good like Pizza Hut truck that they shred off of.
All right, John. All right, I got it.
Then you're in for a big treat, bro. Because it's hot dog time.
No, I was going to say.
Already?
Yeah, the end of this episode's done. If you don't like Gleaming the Cube, we can't talk anymore. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said it wasn't that good.
You said it wasn't that good.
Well, I think the other one that I watched
Blasphemy.
that I'm about to get to was... No, it's just like, all right, aside from shredding a Pizza Hut truck and, you know, shipping weapons in Band-Aid boxes, however that works, it just didn't work as well for me. I thought you said you had beef with that movie. You're going to praise it now?
No, I don't have beef with that movie. It's got like super, you know, I don't know, soft spot in my heart for that movie. Just because when that movie came out, that's when like all the kids in my neighborhood were big into skating, and I was not very good, and most of the kids in the neighborhood were not very good. And it came out and really wanted to see it. And of course, you know, it's a movie that's made for kids about skateboarding, basically, to add this little murder mystery in the background. And it's up and coming Christian Slater. And when it was on in high school, it was on HBO all summer long. Between, I don't know what grade it was, but I watched it probably every time it was on. So I love the scene. There's a scene where Christian Slater's trying to get away from, I don't know, the bad guys or whatever. And he does this thing where he rides a skateboard underneath a moving semi-truck on the expressway. And
Very
it looks
plausible.
Yes. And it looks so ridiculous. It's one of my favorite. That's the scene I will always remember from that movie that makes it worth it.
It's the same scene where the Pizza Hut truck is, because he basically goes under the semi-truck and latches on to the Pizza Hut truck with all his bros and, you know, goes to mollywop the bad guy or whatever. So
mollywop. I love that Yabo has that underground bunker that his bedroom or whatever's in. That's great. I always wanted one of those too. So I was really jealous of the Pizza Hut truck, the bunker bedroom, Christian Slater's awesome frosted tips. Just amazing.
Well, the one that I thought was a little bit better was also from the 80s called Thrashin', which has a 17-ish year old Josh Brolin, which I got like halfway through the movie and I'm like, wait, this is Josh Brolin, this is Thanos thrashing through LA in this like weird West Side Story teen drama with skateboards. And like, it's like someone said, you know what I want to do? I want to make a mix of West Side Story, The Warriors, and like weird 80s skate culture or something. And by skate culture, I mean, we're going to like stop whatever's going on in the story every 5 to 10 minutes and just be like, all right, dude, it's time to skate, and just have like a little impromptu skate session with all kinds of, one dude's like in the middle of the vert ramp doing Rodney Mullen shit while other dudes are like Tony Hawking around him and whatnot. And it's ridiculous. And, you know, it's cheesy, but it's moderately entertaining because it's like, you know, you could tell someone was like, some executive was probably like, what do these skate punks wear? And they're like, well, they all wear tattered jeans, Chucks, and black t-shirts, and they all act like they're sniffing fucking paint thinner. And that's basically what you get for about an hour and 20 minutes mixed with weird skate scenes. I don't know. I thought it was stupid but entertaining. So
I love the fact that the poster has Josh Brolin's head superimposed on this body that it clearly does not fit on. Another thing I saw on YouTube was an interview Josh Brolin did with Tony Hawk, and they talk about this movie, and Josh Brolin, it's like a big, I don't know if it's a regret of his career, but he's definitely like, I don't know, he was not super happy with the movie. I mean, you know, but now he can look back and laugh about it. But I think he's
so young in the movie that I don't know why you would regret it.
I think at the time, because of the quality of the movie, he was so young and he was afraid it would be the end of his career, essentially.
I don't see. I mean, I get it, I guess. Like, I'm not an actor. I don't know what you worry about as an actor, but it's one of those movies to me that's like, you're so young. It's okay. This is probably a bad example because I don't think those kids from Three Ninjas went on to do anything, but it's like, if, you know, the three kids from those movies go on to be in fucking Scorsese movies, someone's going to talk about them being in Three Ninjas, unless you're some dork on a podcast talking about consumption and fucking booger eating movies.
I don't know about any eating of boogers, but
picking, whatever.
Yeah, definitely picking. But yeah, I think this movie kind of comes out, it was 86, so it was like right in the midst of like people changing styles, like from vert to ramp, and from vert to flatland and all that stuff. So it's vert to street, I guess. So it makes sense that they would have, hey, this kid's doing this thing over here and this other guy's doing 360, you know, whatevers.
Right. It's got a very young Red Hot Chili Peppers in the movie, which is kind of, I don't know, I don't really like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the way they frame it's kind of funny because they introduce like, oh, here comes the hooba guy, smackety wackety, you know,
flim flam man,
flaming flim flam band, and then they're like, and later the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Well, then this band comes out and they start playing, you're like, this sounds like the Chili Peppers. I'm not talking about like the current Chili Peppers that are, you know, this kind of like, I don't want to call them soft rock, but this, you know, just generic alternative.
Soft rock. Wow. Dibba dabba dooba.
Right now, just generic alternative, say California in every song and remind people that
Yabba dabba doo, y'all.
We did heroin 40 years ago, guys. Okay. No, this is straight up like funk rock, whatever the fuck they were to start with. And that's fine. Like, I don't like either version of the Chili Peppers, but I'm watching them like, who is this band and why did they lead with saying the Chili Peppers are coming up if they're not going to, like, why not even mention this other band that I don't think exists? And then, you know, Flea all of a sudden takes his shirt off and you can actually see the band now. They're not covered by like bed sheets or some shit. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is the Chili Peppers. I guess we're just going with that. Cool.
Next thing you know, you'll be telling us you watched Rad.
I did not watch Rad. I should have. I got distracted by Wrestler Corner and left the thrashing, gleaming the cube world in the dust for the moment.
It's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's a weekend trip. It's not a week-long vacation. So yeah, that was pretty much all I would watch this week. Other than that, it's just typical catch-up stuff and like rewatch stuff. Still watching Curb. If you're a fan of that show, this last episode was pretty good. There's a pretty good running dick joke through the whole episode that had me laughing pretty hard. That's all I got. Dick jokes and skateboards. Ready to take a break?
Let's take a break.
We will take a break. We'll talk about some stuff and we'll come back and we're going to wrap up Crummy Movie March with the golden
nugget
pick, the Nostril Picker. We'll be right back.
Hey, John, you know a good podcast I could listen to?
Well, Sean, I sure do. I hear you like movies, and a great podcast to listen to about movies is the Girl and the Gay Movie Podcast with Beck and Jay. This month, they're going to be talking about the Friday the 13th movie versus the remake, and they're also going to be talking about Deadpool. They're members of the You Run Podcast Network, and all their previous episodes are available there as well. They cover a wide range of movie topics, including action movies, horror movies, comedies, whatever you're looking for, they got you covered. How's that sound?
Sounds pretty good. Let's give them a listen.
So you can go check them out at yourunpodcast.com, along with all the other shows on the You Run Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to Vampire. Vampire is a wildly ambitious, independent horror comedy film.
It is fun, sexy, thrilling, and unpredictable from start to finish.
On the surface, Vampire is a slasher flick set in the 90s.
References Bambi, but it's not just, Bambi, but horror. It's its own thing, and it has a real story to tell.
Vampire is a story that I wrote to encapsulate my own experience growing up in the wilds of Alaska, seeing humankind interact with nature.
So to me, Vampire is just like a fantastic horror comedy, just like a classic kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, early Scream era.
It's also a gore fest that will make you wonder if we took the actors back there and really mauled them like that.
It is going to be so wildly entertaining.
It's visceral, it's energetic, it's emotional, it's popcorn, it's candy. It feels like watching a movie. It's a movie.
Okay, we're back. And as we mentioned, we're talking about the movie The Nostril Picker. This was originally released as the movie The Changer, so we're seeing a running theme now for Crummy Movie March with multi-titled titles for Crummy movies, multi-Crummy titles, I guess. We start with a third-party review, and this week's third-party review comes from someone named Super Reviewer. It's really the only reason why I picked this review is because his name is Super Reviewer. And Super Reviewer says, hilariously bad B-movie slasher, which is just as bad as the title sounds. But it's perverse, quirky, and humorous. It does keep you amused, and besides the laughs, there's a bunch of bloody stabbings and gorehounds out there. It's a bad sentence. Ridiculous entertainment, 3 out of 5 stars. Thank you, Super Reviewer. Sean, what's this fucking movie about?
So we head over to IMDb where we look at the storyline and the plot. One of them's one of them's the other. I couldn't quite tell you which is which. But this is quite possibly the shortest plot and summary, because they are the same this week, that we have ever done. And I'm going to say it. I should have just set it up and been like, this is super long. Loner turns into a girl to lure and kill other girls. That's it.
That's fair.
That is it.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of fair. So where do we start with this one? This movie we've been threatening to do this episode for really since right around Crummy Movie March last year, because I don't remember which one of us found this based off the
it was you
cover,
and we've been threatening each
me?
other. Yeah, because you brought it up and I was like, that sounds like an amazing movie. Like, why wouldn't we watch this?
Yeah. Okay, well then I'll take full blame for this. So yeah, this movie has been on the back burner, kind of percolating, getting ready to overboil for roughly a year now, and well, it's Crummy Movie March, and I can't think of any better way to end this month.
I mean, you got to let the boogers harden, right? You know, they dry up a little bit, and then that's the most satisfying ones to pick, is when they're kind of stuck in there.
It's extra grit for the switchblade, right? Gives some tackiness, some texturing.
And I'm very sad that this is the last movie for Crummy Movie March. I mean, it's bittersweet because we've wanted to talk about this, but it's the end of the month. Doesn't mean we're not going to talk about Crummy movies for the rest of the month or year, I guess, rest of the year. But, you know, it's a little bittersweet for me because this is my favorite time of the year.
This is also my favorite time of the year. And, you know, Crummy Movie Show is kind of half of what we do, but
Crummy Movie.
We'll do a couple that
Crummy Podcast.
It's not a bad alternate title. If we were going to rename it, that might be the way to go. So, real big overview. I'll kind of paraphrase what this movie is about.
Please.
This movie focuses around a guy named Joe, and he's walking around and you see him being awkward with chicks, and he very horribly tries to pick them up. It goes poorly. And a bum, one of our favorite characters in any movie, a bum basically tells him, hey, if you share some of your liquor with me, I'll teach you how to get chicks, or something like that.
Essentially,
more or less.
Yeah, that's pretty on point.
So they go to the fucking hobo gazebo or whatever, and he sings London Bridge is Falling Down, takes a swig of vodka. Joe says, fuck you, bum, that didn't do anything. Lo and behold, 5 minutes in movie time later, Joe looks like a 17-ish year old girl, and he's like, I'm off to murder some bitches, essentially.
He doesn't realize, and he's trying to buy a nudie mag in an adult bookstore.
Oh, right.
And the clerk is like, you can't buy that. You're too young. And he's like, what? And then he sees him. Doesn't he see himself in the mirror or something? He's like, oh, shit.
Something like that, yeah. Which is funny because the way they the way they portray Joe in this movie, it's like they're real loose and fast with the rules of when he's a girl and when he's Joe. You just kind of have to assume what he is based off how people are interacting with him, because most of the time that we're watching this movie, unless he's looking in a mirror, we're seeing him as Joe, this like clearance rack Jack Nicholson.
He's like a middle-aged guy in the same polyester button-down shirt and slacks with boots or something.
Oh, I definitely got the vibe that he was trying to be the shining Jack Nicholson. On,
really? Okay. I can see that.
Well, the look, not so much.
Well,
the
yeah,
acting.
not the swag. He doesn't have the swagger.
Yeah, no, that's a 101 right there, and he is not that one. So,
do you mind if I dive into the cast? Because I like to give a little cast synopsis.
There's a cast.
Yeah, well, exactly. So I like to go into kind of look at the cast, and when I recognize people, I like to bring them up and say, hey, this is Rob Estes. He's a multi-Crummy Movie March alumni. Look through the whole thing. I can tell you, sometimes you watch a movie and it's a literal who's who. This is a who's that of actors. There's 2 actors in this movie that look to be still active, either as actors or producers or whatever. So this cast and crew, this is a movie where they really are first timers. And this is the only film this director has ever directed.
I was about to say there's a lot of them where they're first time and last timers, it seems like.
Mark Nowicki is the director of this movie, and this is the only thing he's done. I think he's produced or done like crew. He's been random crew on movies.
He's listed as, because I was looking at this at work, coincidentally. I was like, hey, work people, look what I'm looking at. It's this fucking booger guy movie. He's under editorial department on 38 titles.
Oh, yeah, and a lot of shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Copland, he was a good guy. He was the editorial director on Copland.
I gained a bunch of weight and ate a bunch of ice cream and got fat for Copland. But Mark Nowicki is great as editorial.
He made Nostril Picker. Hey, you should come work on Copland. Anyway.
You're the guy from Nostril Picker? You directed that? My family is very happy that I've watched this because now the cover on the little on my Plex server will be gone, so they don't have to look at it. They'd be like, "This is so gross." It's basically a picture of a guy he's like one knuckle deep in with one hand in one nostril with green boogers on it, and the other hand is a switchblade, and they are overjoyed. They're like, "Dad, what movie are you talking about tonight?" I said, "Nostril Picker." They said, really? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Finally going to talk about Nostril Picker.
Well, if you haven't seen the cover for this movie, you'll see a very close facsimile of it on the cover art for this episode. So it won't go to waste. So even if you don't want to take the time to find it.
You going to eat that booger?
Oh.
Not going to go to waste.
See, it's a callback to our ad for the Krusty Boys. You're going to eat that crust? You're going to eat that booger? That's what we should do. Let's rename the show again.
You going to eat that?
We're going to start as Dewey Podmonster. We're going to take a pit stop at Crummy Movie Podcast or whatever we said.
Yeah.
And then now we're just going to land on, you're going to eat that booger.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Okay. It's got all kinds of bad news on it. Anyway, back to the movie. So after Joe basically, as we were saying, light synopsis on this, after Joe just determines like, I can turn into an 18-year-old girl or whatever by singing London Bridge is Falling Down, that we find out at some point that's kind of the key to him shape-shifting is singing London Bridge is Falling Down.
Morphosynthesis, as the bum would call it.
Is that what he called it?
Yeah.
These are back in the days where a child could just show up at school and say, I'm new here, and they gave them a list of classes. No questions asked.
No parent needed.
Yeah, none of that shit. No identification, no proof of residency, nothing. So he just goes and shows up and gets, a slate of classes and essentially starts
schooling.
He starts schooling and he starts off whacking girls and chomping on them a little bit. Well, I didn't want to say whacking off girls, but doesn't sound right.
Might be more appropriate than off whacking, but I knew what you meant.
There's some creepy like undertones to it, aside from being a murdering booger picking dude. There's some sexual assault that's, I wouldn't say it's portrayed because you don't ever see any of that, but it's said after the fact very bluntly.
Well, if you're not listening though, if you weren't listening to what the police were saying, like listening closely, but except for the fact that they repeat it multiple times. You know, they mention like raped with a knife, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm so glad that wasn't something that was portrayed.
Yeah, for sure.
During the movie, okay.
It feels like the way they do their police investigation is like, how do we up the shock value of this? They're like, well, he assaulted her vaginally and then ate her boob. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what happens in this. So
a UFO came. They're just trying to outdo themselves, like one up each other. As to what happened.
Right. And then, eventually this continues to ratchet up, sort of. I mean, it's basically the same thing over and over again, but he essentially gets enough victims that, the movie comes to an end, and I won't spoil the ending for you.
No, please don't. Please don't spoil this.
Well,
he continues to kill people. This movie
is another
victims.
one. This is another crummy one that's made its way to YouTube. So this is very accessible if you want to watch it.
And he kills these victims, and they seem to get closer and closer and closer to this detective's daughters, essentially. So that gets like extra attention from the police, because each one seems to be, he's not the chief. He's just some random like detective, but everyone is like his
Joe Flatfoot or whatever
is a friend of his daughter's. And it's like, oh, it's Joni this time. Well, we're going to walk with Joni to school. Sorry, hun, Joan's not going to be walking to school today. Oh. So it's just, it keeps escalating and escalating because of that kind of factor. But yeah, it very quickly comes to an end. The movie itself is like an hour and 22 minutes. It's a really short movie.
Hour 16.
Okay.
Which I'm here
great.
for, especially for this kind of movie.
Yeah.
Like, even at an hour 16, like you could probably trim out a solid 16 minutes of this and not really miss all too much, roughly.
You could not cut out the montage of the school learning and schooling.
No.
There's an awesome, we'll play the song at the end of the show, because we do that sometimes, hint, hint. But there's this really great song called Schoolin', and it's this montage of Joe as Joe. His character as a girl is Joe as well, without the E. It's like the man's name without the E. And it continues to just go and go and go and go. And it's kind of, it adds a little bit of levity to the thing. The movie's not super serious. It's not like this gore, like the guest reviewer said, it was like, oh, for gore hounds. I mean, there's a little bit, but there's really not a lot of stuff that happen. A lot of the murders that happen in the movie are kind of like off screen. There's only, I can think of two really severe ones that are, well, quote unquote, really severe that happen. It's the first victim gets her fingers cut off, which is weird because they have a little prosthetic that make the nubs move and stuff.
It actually looks fairly decent.
It doesn't look bad.
Like, I feel like 90% of their budget went into making those nubs move after that,
after
those
the
fingers got
vodka.
cut off.
And then there's a hooker that gets her throat slashed like near the end of the movie. That was actually really good. Like, it slashes, it kind of splits, and then it waits a second, and then blood starts pouring out. And it was like, oh, that's, when I was watching it, I thought, I wrote a note. Is this the first time? I'm like, oh no, the girl got her fingers cut off. That I forgot about that part.
Most of what you're seeing as far as gore and stuff is kind of after the fact. Like, the cops are investigating, and there's this body with varying degrees of like, cover her up for respect, but don't. The first murder I thought was kind of funny because of how the coroner's in there and like moving shit around. He's
got it all down. They didn't even need an autopsy. He knew exactly what happened. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, surprisingly with this movie, it's paced pretty well. Like,
yeah,
again, I said you could probably cut 10 to 15 minutes out of this without losing too much, but this really moves fairly well for what this movie is. You get enough of a story, especially compared to last week, you get enough of a story to kind of connect the dots from A to B to C and so on. I never felt like at any point in this movie, again, in contrast to last week, I never felt at any point like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I always kind of knew where the story was, where it was going. So that's good, I guess. It's a pretty simple plot for the most part. I think my biggest gripe with the movie is there's frankly just not enough nostril picking going on throughout it. Like, that's only really something that happens like a couple times. And it's almost happens once in the schooling montage, which is by far the weirdest, like, mood change to the whole movie, but it's also thoroughly entertaining because it's so out of left field. And I don't know about you, I don't know when you watch this movie or how long it's been for you, but I've had that song pop up in my head 3 or 4 times since I've watched this, so it did its job.
Yeah, it adds a nice bit of goofiness to it as well. I liked having it just in this movie.
Frankly, like, for the kids that are in this movie, like the I'm sure they're not kids, but they're playing kids. For this level of movie, I've seen way worse acting this month, let alone, compared to this, like, VHS, like, rental genre, like, horror type shit. So you do a hell of a lot worse. Even Joe, who is kind of one-dimensional, might be putting it nicely. He's not the worst, like, deranged dude in, like, shitty pants I've seen in a movie like this.
And the other thing to mention is, like we said, this is first time, only time director. There's a lot of really kind of technical shots, and there's the one I'm thinking of specifically is where he's in his apartment, and there's that shot where it's like a 360 shot, and it keeps going around and around, and it's one take. It's not like they cut it, because you can tell the way that they turn the camera. Joe's kind of moving into the spots where the camera will pass him, and he'll go counterclockwise. So while the camera's panning around, he's moving to a different position in this apartment. And I thought that the set design, like his apartment is so sparse and so shitty that it is very convincing that this guy is just some, he's a few pennies away from being homeless himself. And he's just in this shitty apartment that looks like it could be in an abandoned building. It really sold everything that he was, this loner, loser, psychopath. And like you said, the acting, it's not for first time people, it's not that bad. I had a question for you that's kind of like side related to the movie. When I watched it, and the first shot, they show this it's kind of like a downtown area, but you can tell there's one big building and the rest is kind of all low. Did any of this stuff look familiar to you?
Not really, but I know there's supposedly a Michigan connection to this movie. I forget what it is.
This movie is filmed in Pontiac and Milford.
Okay. I'm like right between the two of them.
You're like minutes from there.
Yeah.
The shot in the end, Joe's getting chased by the detective, and it's got a twist ending too, by the way, which is actually, I thought was pretty clever. The final scene of him being chased, he gets chased in this parking garage. I could swear that parking garage is right where like Phoenix Plaza used to be, the amphitheater used to be.
Sure.
I'm almost sure it's like right there. I was watching it and I'm like, I saw characters or actors that had like 101 The Riff, like that logo shirt that looks like the Raceway kind of thing. I was like, the quality of the version that we watched was so kind of low quality, it's hard to tell.
Pristine.
Yeah, it's not like super crispy or anything, so you're kind of like, I think that looks like an oval and might say 101 on there. But I had a real feeling that it was somehow local or around this area, and then at the end it says created, filmed, and edited entirely in Michigan, filmed on location, thanks to Pontiac and Milford. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like we could actually go and reenact, or maybe we can go on the on location. Not reenacting, but maybe we can go on location and we can talk there or something. In front of it and get some pictures and post them on social media or something.
Yeah, that's right. We can make profile pictures so you can have your kids be like, I thought we were done with this stupid movie.
Dad, asshole.
I did also I just looked over in my notes and remember this. I really enjoyed the maybe drawn out a little bit, but I was okay with it. The Scooby-Doo dildo gun chase with the transvestite hooker. I thought that was a pretty great scene because all of a sudden it's like literally a Scooby-Doo montage. Like there's doors that don't exist in this shithole squat apartment, and they're just, one goes in one door, comes out the other. Like it's the
they're
whole gag where you have like
through this one.
Right.
Yeah. Like turn around, go the other direction.
Yeah, but I'm always up for a good Scooby-Doo gag in any of these types of movies, and this one worked just as well as any. This is a pretty right down home plate type movie, though. I didn't get any type of deeper meaning with this. This feels like a movie that was kind of, like you said, it's a first time director just seeing what they can do with the camera. And again, there's certainly worse examples of that out there in the world, many of which I'm sure we've covered. Could be a whole lot worse. I kind of would have been, not that I want to see Nostril Picker 2. I mean, I want to see Nostril Picker 2, but not that the world needs Nostril Picker 2.
He would have a finger in each nostril in Nostril Picker 2.
Pick harder.
Nostril Picker 2, pick harder.
To be followed up by Nostril Picker 3, pick with a vengeance. Because Die Hard has the best naming concept for...
Nostril Picker 4, you're going to eat that booger.
That's right. It's a tie-in. We're local. We can make it happen.
There you go. Hey, we could star.
There is enough in this movie, though, that I could say, maybe not from the actors so much, but from the director, that it would have been interesting to see if he had a better movie under his belt that maybe can't. It's probably not dead, but maybe it could still happen. But maybe there would have been a better title out there had he continued down that path. I don't know. I don't think he would have been like the next Wes Craven or something like that, but maybe the next, what's his name? Ty West or James Wan or one of those guys.
One of my favorite things that happens in this movie, other than the kind of that panning shot and the schooling montage and everything, There's a scene, the first victim before the first victim, they're watching a TV show. They're watching a movie on TV. It's like a late night horror movie kind of thing. And there's this piece of dialogue that I thought was really funny. The girl says to Joe, they're talking about what's going to be on the TV. And she says, it's Attack of the Cannibal Girls. Have you ever seen it? And he says, no. Is it any good? And she says, oh, it's great if you've been smoking dope, but we'll have to see how it is without it. I was like, that's great. That's a perfect summation for a lot of these kind of movies.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward movie. Is it that time? I mean, we already played it once.
Treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
It's hot dog time, John.
It's hot dog time. Do you want to wrap Crummy Movie March, or do you want me to start us off?
Why don't you put it in a bun first?
Perfect. I got to say, for a movie that we discovered roughly a year ago and somehow both waited a year to watch before getting into it, this movie kind of lived up and exceeded most of my expectations. It's not like spectacular or anything like that, but as far as if you want a crummy movie to watch, you do a hell of a lot worse. The characters actually make sense for the most part. They're all fairly one-dimensional, but that kind of works for this movie because there's nothing to overthink. There's even the plot twist at the end, you kind of look at it and say, yeah, okay. It's enough of a movie that you're in and out quickly. It's got some ridiculousness in it, which is always entertaining. And before you know it, you're just like, man, that guy barely picked his nose at all. So for me, I give this, this is a solid 4.5, questionable looking relish, maybe not relish covered hot dogs out of 10. And I say that 4.5, somewhat respectfully, it's not great. There's nothing groundbreaking in this. However, if someone was over and I have the Plex screen up and they say, what the fuck is this Nostril Picker? It's not one of them we can't watch that. It's if someone for some reason was I really feel like we should watch this movie, I could sit through it a second time without too much of a complaint. So yeah. And again, it's pretty accessible. It is on YouTube for sure. So I don't know. I didn't look to see where else it is, but if nothing else, you can find it there for free.
According to Just Watch, it's on no streaming services. So I think it's YouTube if you're looking to watch this one.
I don't understand how Netflix they got room for Stranger Things and all these documentaries. They got room for fucking Cobra Kai, probably, maybe again, to see how that ends. But no Nostril Picker. We can't spend $14 and get Nostril Picker on Netflix, restore it in fucking 4K.
4K. You can see the booger in full color.
Fuck yeah. Let's do that.
All right. So for me, this movie is definitely Crummy Movie March material. Again, it's a little bittersweet because it's the last movie of the month. And you know what that means. We got to wait till at least 2 weeks before we can do another Crummy movie. So that's always a sad thing. But I thought that the idea, the plot, the story, really the concept behind the movie was pretty good. It's pretty original. This guy can change shape and he can assume the form of anybody really and do some nefarious shit. And he can only be detected if he's on camera, if his image is captured on a camera. Pretty smart. I thought that was pretty good. I was also really impressed that for a movie that's from a first time and only time director, and a majority of the cast were rookies that really didn't go on to do anything else. It was pretty well acted. It was pretty well put together. Like you said, we've seen movies this month. We've seen movies since we've started this podcast that have been a lot worse. And it doesn't look the best. I think this was actually shot on video. I can't quite tell because
that would be my guess.
Yeah, it's a little kind of fuzzy, but it has a little bit of that shot on video look.
The color palette's a little flush too, like a early 90s, late 80s home camcorder type thing.
And, I think that Joe is as a loser psycho, he is fairly believable as a loser psycho loner would go. I had a lot of fun watching the movie. I think it's a good way to end Crummy Movie March. Again, bittersweet, but, we'll give us 3 weeks. We'll watch another one. I got to give Nostril Picker 5 London Bridges Falling Down out of 11 hot dogs.
Yeah, we're right about on the same page with that. I will say that although Crummy Movie March is coming to an end, I have a strong suspicion that the next movie that we watch is also going to be pretty crummy, but not quite in this way.
AAA crummy.
AAA crummy.
Maybe.
With muscles. So, we want your feedback on this. We like to interact with you when you guys want to talk to us, or you gals, or whatever you are. Boys, girls, anything in between. Our question of the week this week was, what is the strangest use of music inside of a movie? This is very much so inspired by the weird segue of the song Schoolin', We go over to X for our responses because that's where people chose to answer this week. And first up is our good friend Jordana. She is at Pretty Killer Podcast or at Pretty Killer PO1 on Twitter. And she is deciding to torment me, much like she torments you with a movie. And this one is The Greasy Strangler because she loves it so much. She's absolutely right. The music cues in that are strange as hell. And I will never get the image of that greasy dong out of my head. So thank you again for reminding me of it, Jordana.
That keeps popping up in my Amazon Prime feed. And I'm like, I'm not watching this right now. I'm not watching that right now.
Don't watch it until we decide to torture ourselves again. Maybe we can do Dong December or something for another theme month instead of Christmas. Ooh, Crummy Dong December.
I'll pass.
All right. Dissect That Film responds, and they're at Dissect That Film. They said the clown music that accompanies the cops in Halloween 5. That is strange, but it's more comical to me than anything. I know you are already confused by the concept of Halloween 5 with the cults and the thorn and all that stuff, but yes, there's also clown music that follows cops. So sure, you can't wait for that.
Can't wait.
Boomer over at Podcasts in the Woods. You can follow them at Woods Podcast 1. They say, I'm going to say the early odds soundtrack of Ghost Ship. Yes, it's a shit movie, but also the rocking tunes do not scream atmosphere or haunted vessel to me. Hopefully you can figure out what the fuck I just said there because I did terrible with that. Art of the Movies at Art of the Movies responded and said, how about the use of Enya's Orinoco Flow during the torture scene in David Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo? I have not seen any of those movies, so I'm not familiar with this. I think you had said recently you'd seen those.
I haven't seen the American one. David Fincher did the American remake. I've only seen the Swedish, I guess. The Swedish original with Noomi Pace.
Did they do all three of them in America? Or
no, they only did the one with Daniel Craig, and I don't remember who the woman was.
They do that shit where they try to like cram it all into one movie?
No, I think they tried to do it. They tried to follow it and be faithful to the actual movie, you know, the Fincher remakes, but I don't know what ever happened. I think it didn't make enough money or something along those lines.
I don't know how you don't let David Fincher do whatever movie he wants to do, honestly, but that's a whole different conversation. Duker, who is at Oscar Duker, says, Schoolin', obviously. Nostril Picker? I think so. So that's mark one up for Schoolin'. Primetime Mitch at PT Mitch Cassidy says the end credits song in the original Last House on the Left. I don't remember that. It's been so long since I've seen that movie, and I've tried to erase the majority of it out of my brain because it's not a comfortable movie to watch. I don't remember what the end credit song is, but unless you want to remind me, I'll take their word for it.
I want to say it was something really mellow, but I don't remember exactly what it is now.
That's why I would figure that, or it's something really bubbly and happy sounding, because Last House on the Left is not that. Killer Kev from Outer Space, who is at Kev Outer, says Ravenous. I don't remember the music in that at all, so I'll take your word for it. And then Odd Pod Retro also says Schoolin', because he still sings this at random times, because it's a great random song. There are a couple more. Let me see if I can find them here, because Twitter is... Okay. Well, the rest of them don't want to load right now, so that's enough. So sorry that if I missed your questions, you can blame Elon Musk for that. Things don't want to load properly. Sean, do you have a question for the answer of the week?
My answer for the question of the week? Man, I should have said it the other way. My question for the answer of the week, I got to go, just top of mind, I got to go with Schoolin'. It's such a ridiculous song. It's such a ridiculous little montage. It really lightens the mood in Nostril Picker, even though it's not like a super heavy mood anyways. And it's a great song.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really would like to say something like, I feel like the Halloween commercial song that's in Halloween 3 is really out of place and really fucking obnoxious. Talk about an earworm of a song. But the more I watch that, I'm like, no, that actually does feel in place. Schoolin' is the one that, it inspired this question. It's the reason that this came up. So I'm sticking with that too, because it is so bizarre. And I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure I could pull it up because I know I sent you the video of just the song, but they should really have become like a one-hit wonder of a band, because just clipping this scene and putting it on YouTube is like the perfect music video. Watching Joe shoving his finger up his nose and chomping on Doritos in the middle of class. No one seems to notice that. He's got a family-sized bag of tortilla chips and chewing away, but it's definitely a break from the reality of the Nostril Picker, and we appreciate that. You got any closing thoughts for this year's Crummy Movie March, which I'm not even going to attempt to hide it. It will return next year. Even if the podcast stops, we'll come back just to do March episodes.
It's been renewed for another season.
Yeah.
No, I love going back and watching these movies. A lot of the premise of this is kind of, and the show, frankly, is watching these shitty old movies that we remember seeing, a lot of the box art bait that would get you to rent these movies and watch them. And that's really what the spirit of this month for us is to go back and visit some some good, some bad. Sometimes this is like a first time watch. I think this is the only first time watch we've done this month for both of us. Like, I know it was the first time for you seeing Fat Guy Goes Nutsoid. I think was the first time watching all these movies so far this month.
First time on Fan of the Mall, Uninvited I had seen at some point, but it was long enough ago that I needed to be reminded of what I was watching.
And that's fun. I think I know definitely this is the first time for both of us, but I think it's the first time watch this month. This movie was the first time either of us had seen this movie, but we had been talking about it for so long. And that's kind of what the fun part, like back in the day, going to the video store and seeing the movie, the box art or whatever, seeing the box on the shelf. And you could tell your friends like, oh my God, I saw this Scream, Blackula Scream or something on the shelf. And I didn't rent it, but we should rent that sometime. And that's kind of what this Nostril Picker was for us. So sad to see it go, but like I said, it'll be a few weeks. And I'm sure we'll visit another one. So bittersweet, but we'll be back soon.
On the plus side, it will be immortalized as a podcast. So you or I or anyone else can revisit it. And I got to say, you mentioned SEO last week with Fat Guy Goes Nutsoid. This is another one that when you type in the Nostril Picker, there's not a whole lot of shit that comes up other than this movie. So maybe we'll actually, show up in a search result or some shit. Woo. I think that's all we got for this week, though. I don't have anything to add. Do you have anything else to add?
You already asked me that.
Well, good. Screw me then. Whatever. What are we going to do here? Yeah, so that's all we got for this week. You can find us going forward here this week, every week, now and then, whatever you feel like it. You can check out our site, which is at crap.town. That has all our old episodes there. Please check out the You Run Podcast Network, which has all our fellow podcasters, YouTubers, content creators that are part of the You Run Podcast Network. That is at yourunpodcast.com. And then we're on social media pretty much everywhere. If there's, I'm starting to feel like I'm probably, I don't know. We're at Dewey Pod Monster. Search us. If we're on there, that's where you're going to find us, at Dewey Pod Monster. You can interact with us. Tell us other shitty movies to watch. We might even do it in June. I don't know. We like shitty movies year round, but let us know. If there's something else you want us to watch too, maybe you want us to watch a good movie. Be like, hey, I really want you to watch Amadeus and tell me about it.
F. Murray Abraham. That guy's a fucking boss.
Might be a hard sell, but if you're going to have a chance of doing it, that's one of the best ways to do it is to reply to us somewhere. Social media is a good spot to do it. Sean, what am I forgetting? I'm rambling.
Well, I was just going to add, if you want your answer to the question of the week read on this here show, follow us on social medias at Dewey Pod Monster, answer the question of the week. Thanks again to everybody who's been voting on the polls, everybody that's leaving feedback on these episodes. We ask specific questions every week or specific polls. And thanks for going through that. Also, in the show notes, we leave links to the movies sometimes. We leave links to the stuff we've been talking about. A lot of them are affiliate links. If you click them and you buy something later on, after you click the affiliate link, like I said, we get a penny for every 80 gazillion dollars that you spend. So that's nice. This is, it's a listener-supported podcast. And, we haven't been getting any support. So other than your listen, which is fine. We appreciate that too. And other than that, I'm, again, myself rambling. You can find my craft beer adventures at youtube.drafttherapy.com, or you can find me on all the social media platforms at Draft Therapy.
So yeah, that's all we got this week. Go pick your nose and leave it there. Don't do anything else that's in this movie. Just pick your nose. You can drink vodka if you want. Why not?
Straight out the bottle.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say.
I'm not editing this back in, so we can add it to the end of the show.
No, I remember. I was going to say that bum broke the bum code. He talked to the fucking cops.
Oh, yeah.
Snitched. Fucking snitch-ass bum.
Snitchy-ass
anyway,
bum.
That's all we got. So go befriend a bum and hope he doesn't snitch on you, and we'll talk to you next week. Cheers.
Bye.
But they don't know what's happening.
'cause I'm too busy reading and writing and learning all the right things to say. Yeah, schooling, where I got to get me some schooling. I'm gonna get me some schooling. Come on. But they don't know what's happening. Pretty soon there's gonna be a big change. Schooling, yeah, I gotta get me some schooling. Hey, schooling, I'm gonna get me some schooling. Schooling, I'm gonna get me some schooling. Schooling, yeah, I'm gonna get me some schooling. Hey, schooling, I'm gonna get me some schooling. Schooling, I'm gonna get me some schooling. Schooling, yeah.
Yibba dabba dooba dabba booba baba dooba boo doo doo Californication. Fuck. I hate the Red Hot Chili Peppers so much. I had to hold back. When you're like, I don't like them, I'm like, same.
I'm sorry, is generic like soft alt rock wrong for what they are right now? I'm not talking
No,
about
it's
what they
true.
were in 1985 or whenever that fucking movie
Even
came out.
1995. Well, no, 1995. They still suck.
that was still heroin
91.
peppers, I think. Yeah.
was
Either
okay.
way,
Blood Sugar Sex
you
Magic
compare
was a
them
good
now.
album.
Yeah, that was like the 90s
90,
one, wasn't
yeah,
it? That was like
92,
Lollapalooza
91,
and all
92.
that shit.
Yeah, with the foreheads on it. On
Yeah,
the
yeah.
album cover.
Yeah, but ever since then, since Californication and all those, it's just like Mama California. So that over and over and over again.
Yeah. Fuck, man. Stop with the baby talk.
And it's a damn shame because Flea is a hell of a bass player. That guy is, say what you want about the Chili Peppers, Flea is talented as fuck. And I feel like he's kind of wasted in that movie. Not in that movie. That
In the
band.
movie, too.
Not that his millions of dollars that he's probably made from playing in the Chili Peppers and being Flea, you know, I'm sure he doesn't give a fuck about my opinion. Anyway, now that we've segued into Chili Pepper hate talk,